You just heard A Warm Day in February by sound designer, installation artist, podcaster, and field recordist Charles Coes. This composition is based on a field recording taken during February 2021 in Lewiston, Maine, and captures the end of the quiet during COVID and a return to the frenetic pace of life. From the artist's observations, it was a 60-degree day, which should have been 30 degrees, pointing toward the ever-warming planet, but a relief from the cold of winter.
You're listening to Ears Have Eyes on CJSW 90.9 FM. The theme of today's program is PHONOSTALGIA, from other times and places. We're your hosts, Caitlin Brown
and Wayne Garrett.
And we're broadcasting from Treaty 7 territory in southern Alberta, home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. As of last month, Ears Have Eyes is also available on Golden Co-Op Radio in beautiful British Columbia, on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa People.
Each month, we organize our program around a theme. PHONOSTALGIA conjures memories of other times and places, using sound as a sensory trigger. What happens when the sounds of another's nostalgia summon new images in your own head? As autumn sweeps across the landscape, pulling leaves from the trees and tucking the foothills into bed for the winter ahead, We're centering our show around the gentle telekinesis of other people's memories, delivered by sound into your ears and minds. You can learn more about all the sound artists on today's program by visiting our website, hibernationproject.ca, and finding the tab Ears Have Eyes.
The next composition on our program comes from Mexican musician, performer, and field recordist Noel Zavala, an artist particularly interested in the impressions that objects leave in one's memory through sound. Año Sabático Día Dos Eléctrico y Doméstico is based around the idea of the electrodomestico, the Spanish word for house appliance. In the words of the artist, being at home during the days of the COVID-19 confinement made these objects so constant and present through my daily life that I started relating to them with a special attention, until the adjectives electric and domestic seemed reiterative of the same feeling, which I decided to approach through this collection of ideas and recordings. My then 2-year-old daughter learning to speak and wandering through the house, a radio, myself reading Rhizoma, and an excerpt of Stockhausen's lectures where he states the continuum between sound, music, and noise. This is Año Sabático Día Dos Eléctrico y Doméstico by Noel Zavala.
Una casita, una manzana, un gato, una mañana, un búho, blueberry, y Catarina.
Las cosas por la falta del quarterback, por lo débil de la defensa. Patines híbridos e hidráulicos. Conoce nuestras promociones y las opciones de financiamiento especiales que tendremos. Mécate te espera en la Expo Agroalimentaria 2020. Visítanos del 10 al 13 de noviembre. En la carretera Irapuato a Basolo, kilómetro 3.5, en Irapuato a Basolo. Mécate, mecanización inteligente.
La muñeca. No mío.
No está hecho de unidades, sino de dimensiones, o más bien de direcciones cambiantes. No tiene ni principio ni fin, siempre tiene un medio por el que crece y desborda. Constituye multiplicidades lineales de n dimensiones, sin sujeto ni objeto, distribuibles en un plan de consistencia del que siempre se sustrae lo uno, n-1. Una multiplicidad de este tipo no varía sus dimensiones sin cambiar su propia naturaleza y metamorfosearse, contrariamente a una estructura que se define por un conjunto de puntos y de posiciones, de relaciones binarias entre estos puntos y de relaciones biunívocas entre esas posiciones. El rizoma solo está hecho de líneas de segmentaridad, de estratificación como dimensiones.
Already in the early 50s, when I studied again after having finished my music studies at the University in Bonn, communication science and phonetics, the simple analysis of noise sounds, of the wave structure in noise sounds, just led us automatically to statistical wave structures. And when I enlarge into a larger time, what I find in a single sound, like in a certain consonant, then I get entire musical sections which have the same behavior, like a single noise. I think that the most important discoveries in the different fields of musical form, let's say everything that happens between 8 seconds and a quarter of an hour and half an hour in music. And in rhythm and meter, everything that happens between 1/8 of a second and 1/16 of a second and 8 seconds. And everything that happens in harmony and melody, everything that is organized between 1/16 of a second and about 1/4000th of a second. These three regions are all interrelated. And it's interesting that when one would be able, and one is nowadays almost able, technically, to stretch a single sound into half an hour, a sound which lasts, let's say, 1 second, stretch it half an hour, then you have an overall form which has the characteristics, the subdivisions, etc., of that single sound. Or if, on the other hand, you are able to compress a whole Beethoven symphony into half a second, then you have a new sound, and its inner microstructure has been composed by Mr. Beethoven.
You just heard Thonis Heraklion, Peaceful Beneath the Waves, by Stephen Roddy, a musician, sound artist, and researcher based at the Radical Humanities Laboratory at University College Cork. Thonis Heraklion was an ancient Egyptian city founded around 8th century BC on adjoining islands at the mouth of the Nile Delta. For 1,000 years, it acted as the port of entry for ships from the Greek world until a combination of earthquakes, tsunamis, and rising sea levels caused the sinking of the city into the Mediterranean Sea. It wasn't until 2000 AD that it was finally rediscovered, having sat peacefully beneath the waves for 1,200 years. In the artist's words, the story of Thonis Heraklion presages what lies in store for coastal cities facing the ravages of climate change in coming years. This composition is part of a freshly released album titled Leviathan, exploring climate catastrophe through a series of 5 vignettes tied to specific locations worldwide. We'll link to this album and share more about the work on our website, hibernationproject.ca.
PHONOSTALGIA is the theme of today's episode of Ears Have Eyes on CJSW 90.9 FM. The next composition on today's program comes from London and Cairo-based artist and composer Luca Nasciuti. What we have given is a composition combining fragments of melodies recorded on the cello with field recordings of the composer's family home. The piece has an intimate connection with childhood memories, time, and loss. The composition is organized in a spontaneous manner. Fragments are generated through improvisation while maintaining a strong melodic content. Pitch oscillates freely, in and out of tune. This approach attempts to question our relationship to Western canons of music, allowing melody to operate as textures that interact with field recordings.
Following Luca's work, you'll hear Capri Code, originally an 8-channel sound installation by Hamburg-based trombonist, sound artist, and curator Felix Mayer. Capri Code reflects the specific soundscape of the installation site and the immediate surroundings, relating them to places where the installation has already been. With each realization, the installation is adapted to the local conditions and expanded with recordings of the surroundings. The radio edition is documentation of this accumulation. But first, here is What We Have Given by Luca Nasciuti.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You just heard Revere Noom by Singaporean-American multimedia artist Hilda Daniel. Revere Noom is Moon River's longing, iconic promise in a melancholy reverse tide. The lyrics of the song portray a yearning for escape and transformation, a dream of self-determination. Originally performed by Audrey Hepburn in the 1961 movie, the song and dialogue are re-recorded backwards with minimal processing. This inversion transforms the song into a new, distinct melody, arrangement, language, and meaning. The piece ends with Audrey Hepburn not so much singing as swallowing her own words. This composition is a preview for next month's theme, Mouth Sounds. In the artist's words, the interrupted, cut short, detached bits of the stories reflect a detachment of women's voices and the modes of expression traditionally expected or not expected of them. To varying degrees, they were not expected to have anything intelligible or of import to say, believed not to have the same capacity to contribute to discourse, literate or political speech, as men. If you're interested in sharing your own sound art, experimental music, noise, or spoken word on our program, perhaps for next month's theme, Mouth Sounds, you can find submission information on our website, hibernationproject.ca.
We're ending this month's program with two final works. First up, we'll hear a piece called Paisage from London-based Portuguese composer, electronic performer, and researcher Jorge Ramos. In an effort to open his ears more broadly to found and ambient sounds as music, the artist wrote Paisage as a soundscape piece, based on the sounds that surrounded him during the writing process. This effect was enhanced by the imposed limitations of pandemic confinement. He was sharing the same house to work and live in, which made him realize how musical sound is constantly all around us. We'll end our broadcast with a composition from returning contributor, Hungarian sound artist, lawyer, and journalist, founder of Synth Loop Audio, Dr. Tibor Donat. Tibor, a prolific artist in his own right, just released an intriguing new album, Granular Up Your Mind. We'll link to it on our website. Traveling on the Quasi-Moon draws from phonostalgia as it relates to other places. The composition is about FW13, a 15-meter-wide asteroid orbiting the Earth since at least 100 BC. During its orbit, FW13 will come within 14 million kilometers of Earth, and it could remain in our vicinity for more than 1,500 years. Because it poses no impact threat to the planet, no one has paid attention to it for thousands of years. No one suspected that this tiny asteroid was full of life and sound. Researchers at an observatory detected strange sounds coming from space, which they recorded with a radio telescope. After careful analysis of the radio waves, Tibor decided to reproduce the sounds coming from inside the asteroid in a range audible to the human ear. This is Paisage by Jorge Ramos. Stay tuned for Traveling on the Quasi-Moon by Tibor Donat.